we are the sovereign beings of our minds. That's why be careful what you watch on the internet. Be careful the kind of media you consume. Think for yourself. Go for a walk, meditate, read books. Get regrounded in the truth of your life, and then rehearse the state of being you want.
Welcome to Living in the Miracle Zone. This is the place to be if you want to live in the flow of synchronicities and miracles in your everyday life. I'm your host, Marci Shimoff. I'm a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a teacher in The Secret, and the creator of the worldwide program, Your Year of Miracles. And I've spent my life studying happiness and miracles. And in this podcast, we bring to you extraordinary miracle stories that are inspiring and groundbreaking miracle tools that will show you how you can live your most miraculous life. It's my heartfelt intention that we have a fabulous time together. So welcome to the Miracle Zone. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by the phenomenal Colette Baron Reid. Colette, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you in the Miracle Zone.
Always great to get to be with you any chance I get, Colette. So let me tell people a little bit about you before we dive into our conversation. Colette is a best-selling author. She is an internationally acclaimed oracle expert. She's a spiritual intuitive. She's a personal transformational thought leader. She's a business strategist. She's an artist, and she's an educator. She is a lot of things. She's also an amazing singer. And Colette's the founder of the Oracle School Experience and Oracle Palooza and the Dream Quest Platinum Mastermind. She's also the author of 19 best-selling Oracle card decks. Oh my God, that's amazing. You've sold over 2 million of those around the world. You've also written 7 books. And Colette, I know that you really are passionate about helping people really move beyond their limitations into a dynamic and creative and wonderful relationship with the universe. And I just want you to know that I adore you. I love every time I get to be with you. I feel inspired. I feel awakened. I feel you're fun, and you're really a great, loyal friend and just a wonderful human being. So thank you for being in my life.
You are so welcome, and ditto, you're making me cry. It's so sweet.
Well, I've really been excited to have you here because I know that you did not always live a miraculous life, and you have quite an amazing story. And I would love for you to share, how did you move from the unmiraculous to the miraculous life that you live now?
So it's an interesting thing to think about right now, because I was thinking about it this morning and considering that literally everything I do today was seeded in that transitional time of my life from moving out of a very painful life when in my 20s. I was a drug addict and an alcoholic. I had some tremendously violent episodes that changed my life in a very powerfully profound way, my early 20s. And that really shaped who I became. And I really engaged in a lot of self-harm in my early 20s because I couldn't live with what happened. When a woman loses her ability to choose or ability to do with what she wants with her body, or, is victimized, so I identified as a victim for a long time. Therefore, I really couldn't live in my own skin. And I hit bottom one day. That carried on until I was just close to my 27th birthday. And I hit bottom, and literally, I had been surrounding myself with people who supported that concept too, that, and that's what happens when we think all the time that we are one way. We are going to just see that in the outer world, repeated over and over again. And I had a spiritual awakening in a drug dealer's basement, actually. And I will never forget it as long as I live. I hadn't bathed or slept for a week. I was doing cocaine in the 80s when it wasn't addictive, apparently. But anyway, it was very harmful. And I had just, I couldn't take it anymore. And I remember holding onto a sink and saying, help me, but not the kind of help me I used to say, which was help me get out of this. And I won't do it again, but I will, right? This was like total surrender. Like I knew I was going to die. I saw myself for the first time as I really was in the mirror. The whites in my eyes were jaundiced and yellow. And I was very skinny. That's the only good thing about being, on coke is that you never gained weight. But I mean, I was bankrupt. I was bankrupted morally, spiritually. I saw the value of my life being nil at that moment. And but something happened. And whatever life force, like my whole life, I looked for God, right? I was raised Christian and I'd gone to church every Sunday. And then I found out later that my mom had Jewish background. So that was interesting. My grandfather was killed in a concentration camp. So that I learned more about just all these different things. But God to me, I knew that whatever was there, but I was looking for some benevolent relationship with it, right? Or him. And I knew that I had to not look at it the way I was taught. So there, the jealous, angry God, I had to find a brand new way to see this. And I was willing to surrender everything at that moment. And I will tell you that I never looked back. Like I left that place and there was like this big light that came around me, and whether I was hallucinating because I hadn't slept or like for a week, it was that I heard a voice that said, it's over and next kind of thing. So I'm not going to go into detail about the unmiraculous things that happen because I think it's not the point. The point is that when we surrender and we finally give up, because my way didn't work, my best thinking got me into those situations. And I had so many stories about myself as a result of what had happened. And then, I didn't understand any of it. And I just kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I had to let go everything, my identity, what I thought was true, all of that, to a power greater than myself. And it didn't, I had one more episode, on the New Year's, because that was around the end of October. And I ended up in a treatment center for women. And I will tell you that saved my life. So after I came out of that, it was a 28-day program. And I recognized that I had to also create a brand new concept of what a higher power was. So if I could say that the biggest thing for me and consistently for me for the past almost 40 years, because that was almost 40 years ago, one day at a time, I've stayed clean and sober all that time and devoted myself to this spiritual life that I have and helping others. And I'm very lucky to be alive. So I don't take any of this for granted. But I knew that if I was going to live a life that had miracles in it, I had to change. And I had to become the person that had the life I said I wanted. And that meant I had to go through a lot of peeling of the onion skins and reassessing my identity and what I believed was true and letting go the identity of a victim and recognizing that this idea of this big benevolent God may actually also have been inaccurate. Maybe the universe is a neutral force, that my job is to be very mindful of how I think and how I feel and what I rehearse. And then I start to see different things in the outer world and my choices. And, I'm responsible for all of those things. My today now was yesterday's tomorrow. And whatever I do and think and behave and today is going to build my future tomorrow. So the best part of all this is that I learned a crucial thing, which is to live 24 hours at a time, that I couldn't do all of this changing. Otherwise, I would just go back to my old life, but I could do one small micro change every single day. I was very lucky early on because it was the 80s. And the secret hadn't come out yet. That was in the early 2000s. But I went to Unity Church because, you don't go to bars anymore. You go to church basements, right? You hang out with other people that are trying to change their lives. And so Unity Church was very much the kind of prosperity church where you go in there, they teach you about treasure maps, they meditated, they had cool music, right? And it was non-denominational. You could be Jewish, you could be Christian, it didn't matter, right? You were going to go in there and you were going to shift the way you saw the world. And I will tell you that I took to that like a duck to water. And why? Because it worked. And what they don't tell you, of course, is that if you have trauma, if you have things that have happened, you have to face those things head on, or you won't. If you keep allowing this shadow to be the one who's driving your bus, you're going to go back to the same place you started, or at least you're going to spin your wheels a few times. So I'm glad nobody told me about how much work it was going to be. But I've surrendered to it and still do the work. And I still believe that one day at a time is the way I live. And I still believe that it is my job to stay, no matter, I'll give you a good example, okay? I know I'm not letting you talk, but it's like when we have.
First of all, before you give the example, I just want to say, Colette, I love hearing this story, and congratulations on almost 40 years, clean and sober. And back in the 80s, Unity Church was also somewhere where I got started
Right?
in all of this as well. So I completely appreciate that. And I do want to hear your example. And I also want to hear, what do you say to people? And I totally agree with baby steps. One step at a time is absolutely the way. That 24 hours is it. You can't handle, thinking about 10 years of this, but you can handle, I can do 24 hours. I want to understand, how do people who aren't hitting rock bottom, who aren't necessarily, laying on the
maybe
floor,
they're just disappointed.
How do they surrender?
Right. It's a lot easier when you don't have a choice. So I will say that hitting bottom for me, in a way, looking back, even though I paid a very high price to sit in that chair, but when you go down that far, like there's a big, vast way. But you're right. How does a person who is not? But it's all relative, because someone else's bottom could be very high. Your bottom could be that you're so judgmental and you won't listen to other people, and you're so determined that your way is the only way. And therefore, if it doesn't go your way, you're completely devastated. Like this is a person who might consider themselves as a normal, functioning person, that have never been raped, that have never had a drug and alcohol problem, that have just been, you know what I'm saying, that have had a life and now they didn't get what they wanted. I see a lot of people like that losing their marbles because they see the world as unacceptable. And what I had to learn was that we don't always get what we want, not right away, but that doesn't mean that the seed that we planted isn't viable and still rooting under the ground for when the right timing is to come up out of that ground and bear fruit, right? We see everything very black and white, and a lot of people have temper tantrums and whatever. And I'm not minimizing the fact that people are traumatized by certain world events, et cetera. But, we all have to remember that whatever is in front of us, it's like surrendering. The serenity prayer is perfect. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It doesn't mean that, I'm just going to acquiesce and apathetically accept what I don't like. It means there's work to do. But I am going to say, okay, this is what it is. How can I be resilient? How can I be respectful? How can I be adaptable? How can I put myself, the best of me, forward and listen deeply, and be part of a collaborative universe instead of one that is so divisive, which is what we're seeing now, right? So no matter what I might believe is right.
Well, I know that you've got a motto that, everything is possible when you open to your connection to the universe. And so that's the key. And I do want to hear your example. I didn't want to cut you off to hear the example.
Oh, I did. That was my example. That was my example. It's like when people are disappointed about something, that they worked so hard for something to happen. We see this a lot in the collective, but you can say that the same thing for a person. A person wants to manifest something or create a miracle in their life, and it doesn't happen. A really beautiful author named Catherine Ponder, who you would know as a Unity Church minister who wrote these books. One of them,
I know her well.
right? And that was my Bible. And she talked about chemicalizations, for example, which is when you put yourself in alignment with what you say you want, you become the person that has that. But sometimes the shit has to hit the fan. It has to hit the fan first. And that you immediately want to deem it bad, wrong, whatever. You don't know. We don't know what the best is. We really don't. We think we know. So it's surrendering to, not surrender like I give up, but like white flag. It's like, oh, I get it. That's interesting. How do I meet this? How do I meet the world where it is? Still be of service to it and be patient enough and respectful enough to stay the course for ourselves and do those things like, example, the discipline of monitoring our mind is so crucial. Like I had a really good example the other day. I was convinced I had this chocolate. I bought this chocolate and I thought it was normal chocolate. And I saw I was with my friend having a cup of coffee, and I just in a glimpse of my eye said that they had this spicy chili chocolate, right? And I'm a little allergic to cayenne pepper, so I'm like, oh, I'm not going to have that. So I looked and I said, oh, I just want that. So I bring four little tiny pieces to me at the table with me and my friend. And it's like a comedy show. As I'm putting a piece in my mouth, I see some red dust on it. So I immediately say that is cayenne pepper. In my head, cayenne pepper is on the chocolate. Uh-oh. But I'm a chocoholic, so I put it in my mouth anyway. Okay. So it's like I'm putting it in there. Doesn't my tongue swell? And I'm like, oh my God, this is so spicy. I say to my friend, oh my God, it's so spicy. So she takes it and she goes, no, it isn't. So I'm like determined. I call the woman over and I say, what is this red dust on here? She goes, that's sugar. My mind said it was cayenne pepper. I caused my tongue to swell and my mouth to feel like that. And then I took another piece of it and I'm like, oh my God, you're right. So we can, through our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs and whatever emotional relationship to that hairball that I just experienced with, we are responsible for what we allow to go in there and how much we rehearse it. Right now, in that moment, it taught me something. I immediately made something mean something. And then I had a response. It's like the nocebo. And I think right now, we all have to be very conscious and cautious about that. That only we are the sovereign beings of our minds. That's why be careful what you watch on the internet. Be careful the kind of media you consume. Think for yourself. Go for a walk, meditate, read books, get regrounded in the truth of your life, and then rehearse the state of being you want. Now, that's easy to do when we are not dealing with, we're not in a war-torn place, right? You can't tell somebody in a place where there's bombs dropping on them, oh, go and manage your mind. That's a totally different thing. But if anybody's watching this, we're pretty privileged to be in a place, and that's not a bad word, right? And therefore, I think we're responsible to put that work in. Feel your feelings and then get back to work. You know what I mean? I think it's just so important.
I totally know what you mean.
And I think that that's coming from me. Yes, of course, I had such a very dramatic turnaround. Then I had many more things that happened. My parents died tragically. There's the whole kit and caboodle, all these other things that happened. But every time I said to myself, I'm going to have to accept what is in front of me and realize what I can actually do. And I think that's so simple, just to maintain the sense of joy and peace and love in our lives.
I so appreciate that this is all about, you're very into manifesting. And
totally.
I'm up how to manifest.
It is.
I know that you're even working on a big project around manifesting. Yeah. Tell us more about manifesting and this experience.
So everything that I do in my work is all about who do we want to become, right? So it's always going to be about manifesting. It's at the moment now, I'm also a science nerd. So the project that I'm working on is called The Art of Manifesting. And it's about the interface between art, mysticism, quantum physics, and psychology, right? How is it that we interface with something creative to anchor the thing that we say that we want in such a way that it will. And there's centuries, thousands of years. Actually, the first time we've seen it was 700,000 BC on a cave wall in India. So we've used these techniques. But I will say this: when you go into the sciencey piece of it, and you look at how the brain operates, and how it engages with the conscious universe, we have a reticular activating system in our brain, and that ignites because when the more that we feed it information, when it's consistent and rehearsed, the more it's going to look for evidence in the outer world to tell you that that's true. Right. So when it's connected to an elevated emotion, that's actually how propaganda works. You feed people the information often enough until it becomes part of them, and that's what they see. So for us, if we want to be conscious and deliberate about manifesting or co-creating, we have to get down to the fact that this is going to be the way it is. Mindful of what we feed the brain, and what are we rehearsing? And I ask myself that every day. What am I rehearsing? And it's like a puppy. It's like, sit down. No, Joe Dispenza's work is very, very good for that. He does these meditations and stuff, and about how you leave yourself behind. Basically, he talks about no mind, no body, no self, in order to move into pure potentiality. And if you look at our mutual friend Lynn McTaggart, she talks about the field being a living conscious entity that you can engage, right? And you can make miracles in small groups based on intention. So if that is true, then why wouldn't this work? Of course it works. So I just create tools, because I'm also an artist, to say, well, how do we solidify this? So that is basically what I'm working with. But right now, I think it's the mind that all of us have to work on, is the mind and the emotions, and to be rigorously honest with ourselves and do whatever we need to do to be with each other as opposed to against each other. We're collaborators.
Manifest the world together.
Right? We collaborate.
Yes, we are collaborators. And this is why I actually love the work of having collectives come together with the intention of not only their own life, but the intention of creating a better world. We definitely do it together. Colette, you are the master of Oracle decks. And I would love to know why these Oracle decks can be such powerful tools, and how do they help us in manifesting? How do they help us live more in the miracle zone? How do we use those as tools?
So oftentimes we don't really know what's going on because we're seeing we see through a very limited lens. The reason I think my Oracle decks were popular and still are popular, but there's so many out there now, is because they're based on ancient divination systems. They're really a synthesis of things that have existed for like ever. And they work off what's called a lexicon, which is a vocabulary of symbols or symbolic concepts that speak a language, right? That reflect to us what we need to know on any given day or time about what we need to know in order to stay in alignment with the highest good. I'll pull a card right now for the collective, right? Who's ever watching this, right? So what would we all need to know?
Fantastic.
Right? About how to manage the energy till the end of the year, right? Let's look at that. So what would we all need to know? So I'm going to pick two cards. Yes. Okay. And chop wood. All right. 3 cards came out. All right. So we got the Fates card. So that means we have to surrender to life on life's terms. That there are certain things that are set in motion that we may look at and say, oh, that's not what I wanted. But in fact, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. Or we could say to it, oh, that's amazing. And that's amazing, right? So it's certain things are fated because they were set in motion maybe a long time ago, right? We don't know why. And they sometimes come completely illogical, but it's asking us to surrender to what is in front of us. Second card is soulmates and protection. So this is about, our doing step is really about, keeping our people close, but not to other people. That's the other thing. When soulmates is in protection, we're basically saying we're going to hunker down and you don't get to come, right? It's being very exclusive instead of inclusive. So it's reminding us that we are a we, that we are not, we're not, it's us and them, but also to be mindful and discerning who we associate with, etc. And to kind of go really deep into the relationships that we have that we trust, but also being willing to keep our hearts open, to others who are not like us, right? Now, the last card is chop wood, which is do the work. And it's chop wood, carry water. I mean, this isn't a time for big, giant, sweeping changes by the individual. We're going to be part of a larger shift in evolution in the collective, but we just have to do our own.
Fantastic. Well, Colette, you are, I can just say, just having this conversation with you, I feel uplifted. I feel inspired. I'm going to be taking my baby steps, and doing just the wisdom that you shared was beautiful. So I always love to end our sessions, our time together, with a quote. I love the quote that what is yours will never be withheld. And I also love, be willing to dance the victory dance as if your greatest dreams are realized, and then watch how easily things fall into place. So we're here for our dreams to be realized and for us to do victory dances and to do them together in love and in joy. So I love you, Colette. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for being here and listening today. I hope that you're also feeling inspired and uplifted and more in the Miracle Zone after our time together. And please share this Miracle Zone love with your friends and with your family. And you can also take our free 2-minute quiz to find out what your miracle superpower is to help you live more in the Miracle Zone. It's at miraclezonequiz.com. And remember that your life of miracles is waiting for you. It's your birthright. And simply by being here, you are taking a step forward into the Miracle Zone. Enjoy with lots of love.